Oh boy. Oh boy. Can't stoop any lower. Can't get any more down and out. Can't look any more pathetic. They continue to set a new bar. The Players Association have now started a petition that fans can sign to show their support. That's right. Like, wait, they started a petition? What is this? www.petition.org? Oh my gosh, this is pathetic.
The air in the negotiation room is supposed to be thick with tension. A silent battlefield where collective wills clash over spreadsheets and futures. It's a space for power plays, for calibrated threats, for the subtle art of leverage. What it is not designed for, what fundamentally undermines its very purpose, is the scent of desperation masking itself as strategy. In the critical 2025 collective bargaining agreement negotiations between the WNBA and its Players Association,
I don't know where to begin, but let's start here. Shout out to Mick over there, Mick Talks Hoops. An online petition in CBA negotiations. The league has to just be laughing at this point. They have to be. They have to be. Like, wait, they started a petition? What is this? www.petition.org? For those of you asking if there's a petition, please click the link below.
That scent became overwhelming. It wasn't emanating from the league's owners, who entered with a surprisingly robust financial offer. It wafted, instead, from the union side of the table, carried on a series of bewildering, public-facing missteps that, in real time, drained their bargaining power and exposed a profound disconnect between perception and reality. This is the story of how a union, armed with the league's greatest growth momentum in history, managed to orchestrate its own diminishment, trading the hard currency of data and discipline for the hollow theater of online petitions and symbolic gestures. The unraveling in many ways could be pinpointed to a single, almost quaint, artifact of internet activism: the online petition. In the high-stakes poker of professional sports labor talks, where the ultimate bluff is the threat to strike and shutter the industry, the WNBPA decided to publicly play a different card. They launched a digital plea, a clickable appeal for fan support hosted on a generic platform. The optics were instantly, catastrophically weak. Imagine the scene from the ownership perspective.
Oh, so nobody really wants this to go on. No, okay. Say no more. Say no more. That's not all we have. The Players Association. The 2025 WNBA season has set records for attendance, been in total, both in total and per game, even before the playoffs. More than 3 million fans have flocked to see stars like Asia Wilson of the Las Vegas Aces and Alyssa Thomas of the Phoenix Mercury.
Across the table, union representatives speak of unity, of the willingness to walk out, of the unwavering support of a burgeoning fan base. Then, during a recess, a curious owner pulls out a phone, navigates to the much-touted action alert, and is greeted not by a tidal wave of public outrage, but by a trickle. At the time of its unveiling, the petition had garnered approximately 1,600 signatures. That number, 1,600, is a whisper in a stadium built for roars. For a league that had spent the entire season touting record-breaking attendance, monumental television ratings, and a cultural surge, it was a deafening silence. This was not a show of force. It was an involuntary audit of public passion.
Folks, people can't pick Alyssa Thomas out of a lineup if she was the only one standing in it. If she was the only person standing in a lineup, and you come up there and the cop asks you, can you pick out Alyssa Thomas out of this lineup, please? Person will look at you, look at the person behind the glass, look back at the cop. I don't know who Alyssa Thomas is. I don't even know. Is this Alyssa? They'd have absolutely...
The petition did not signal to ownership that the fans were mobilized and ready to boycott. It signaled that the fans were, at best, passively sympathetic, and certainly not invested enough to digitally mobilize over the arcana of revenue-sharing percentages. The union, in a move intended to demonstrate grassroots power, had instead publicly calibrated its own lack of leverage. It was a unforced error of staggering proportions, a self-inflicted wound that changed the tone of the entire negotiation. The threat of a strike, which should hang over talks like a guillotine, suddenly felt less like a blade and more like a prop. Ownership now had quantifiable.
Page's name didn't work, so let's try some other names. That's a good point. They used Page's name for Unrivaled, didn't work. The Dallas Wings used Page's name to get people in the arena during Dallas Wings games. That doesn't work. The networks, Ion, they use Page's name to try to get people to watch on TV, and that doesn't work. So I guess just keep going down the list until one of them sticks. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark's the easiest answer if you really want to sell.
Public evidence that the union's most potent weapon, the withdrawal of labor, might not provoke the widespread fan backlash needed to make it truly fearsome. This misstep was symptomatic of a deeper, more troubling strategic ailment within the union's leadership. A refusal, or an inability, to accurately diagnose and weaponize the source of the league's unprecedented growth. The 2024 season wasn't just successful, it was transformative. Arenas that had long echoed with empty seats were packed. Jerseys flew off shelves. Television ratings shattered records. But this growth was not a uniform tide lifting all boats equally. It was a tsunami catalyzed by a singular, undeniable force: the arrival of Caitlin Clark. Clark's rookie season was a cultural and economic phenomenon. She didn't just improve the Indiana Fever. She made them a national roadshow. She didn't just sell her own jersey. Reports indicated she drove over 40% of the league's total merchandise revenue during her debut stretch. Her playoff debut drew over 3.2 million viewers, a number that would have been unthinkable for the WNBA just a year prior. She was, by every measurable metric, attendance, ratings, social media engagement, merchandise sales, the league's primary growth engine and its most compelling argument for increased valuation. Yet, in the union's official messaging and public negotiation posture, this reality was conspicuously, almost willfully, absent. Instead of brandishing Clark's impact as Exhibit A in their case for a larger share of a rapidly expanding pie, the union's communications opted for a diluted, all ships rise narrative. In one glaring example, they highlighted the league's attendance records by name-checking stars like Aja Wilson and Alyssa Thomas. While Wilson is a legitimate, multi-time MVP and champion, the choice to elevate Thomas, a superb player but not a major national draw alongside Clark's Omission, was a baffling piece of messaging. To the casual sports fan whose engagement is the holy grail of this growth, Alyssa Thomas is an anonymous name. The union was selling the league's star power while deliberately sidestepping its brightest star. This was more than a marketing fumble. It was a critical negotiation error. At the heart of any CBA discussion is a single word: value. The players must prove their collective labor generates the revenue necessary to fund their demands. By ignoring the player who most demonstrably and explosively increased that value.
I must be missing all those asking about a petition. Yeah, me too. We need a new players union. Then they do this. This was last week or the week before. Like, this just goes to show you the missteps. They put this out. WNBA players are ready to strike after contract expires. I mean, this is just sad. This is just sad. And then they changed their profile picture.
The union weakened its own economic argument. It was as if they were negotiating from a position of perceived moral entitlement rather than commercial contribution. Ownership, intimately familiar with the financial data, knew exactly which jersey sales spiked, which games sold out, and which television windows dominated. To see the union avoid mentioning the catalyst for those numbers was, from their perspective, either disingenuous or delusional. It allowed ownership to negotiate with the cold, hard data of Clark's impact, while the union talked around it, creating a fundamental asymmetry in the discussion. This pattern of substitution was not new. Other entities had tried it before. The unrivaled 3x3 League, television networks, and even individual teams had attempted to market other stars, like the then collegiate phenomenon Paige Buchers, as the vanguard of interest. with consistently muted results. The market had spoken with ruthless clarity. While a core of dedicated fans supports the league broadly, the explosive, demographic, breaking growth is attached to specific, transcendent talents. The union's decision to ignore this market signal in favor of a more politically palatable, equitable narrative was a luxury it could not afford at the bargaining table. Billionaire team owners who live inside spreadsheets and balance sheets, as the original commentary noted, are not swayed by narratives. They are swayed by profit and loss statements. By refusing to anchor its demands in the most profitable reality, the union ceded the factual high ground. This disconnect bled into the substance of the demands themselves. The owner's initial offer was, by the historical standards of the WNBA, extraordinarily generous. Maximum salaries surpassing $1 million for the first time, a jump in revenue sharing from approximately 9% to 15%, a 67% increase, an average salary approaching $500,000, and a minimum salary around $250,000. This represented a massive financial leap, one that acknowledged the season's growth and stretched the league's current economic model. Yet, reports suggested the union's counter-proposals were anchored in a different universe, one that seemed to mirror the economics of the NBA, a league with decades of established profitability and television contracts, orders of magnitude larger. The WNBA, for all its fantastic growth, is not the NBA. It is a 28-year-old league that has only recently achieved sustained profitability and one that has historically been financially supported by the NBA. To demand NBA-style guaranteed money and revenue splits from a balance sheet that cannot yet support it is not aggressive negotiation. It is a fantasy that risks destabilizing the very foundation of the enterprise. The union's rhetoric escalated to match this disconnect, framing owners as acting in bad faith, disrespecting players, and jeopardizing the future of women's professional basketball. This incendiary language rang hollow when juxtaposed against an offer that more than doubled the minimum salary. The real jeopardy to the league's future would be a CBA that allocates money the league does not yet earn, potentially forcing cuts elsewhere, stifling investment, or risking the financial health of individual franchises. The owners, in this light, appeared to be the responsible stewards, offering transformative raises while trying to ensure the league's long-term solvency. The union, by contrast, risked appearing entitled to a share of revenue that existed more in aspiration than in reality. The performative nature of the union's campaign reached its zenith with social media tactics better suited to a consumer brand launch than a high-stakes labor negotiation. Swapping official profile pictures to an hourglass emoji, mimicking a TikTok countdown, projected not gravity, but gimmickry. It framed the negotiation as a matter of social media pressure rather than economic calculation. To the owners, this was noise. A professional players' union succeeds through solidarity, strategic silence, and the credible threat of collective action, not through trending hashtags. Every emoji, every poorly supported petition, every press release that prioritized rhetoric over rationale quietly communicated to ownership that they were not dealing with a counterpart fully versed in the grim mechanics of labor warfare. It signaled a union that might be more focused on winning the narrative online than winning the argument in the room. The tragic element in this whole saga is the population most vulnerable to its fallout: the rank and file players. The WNBA roster is not composed solely of max salary stars and cultural icons. It is filled with over 100 athletes for whom the league salary is their primary, often only, significant basketball income. They do not have million-dollar endorsement portfolios or off-season gigs with Unrivaled or Project B. For them, the CBA negotiation is about survival, stability, and respect. Their union leadership, however, seemed to be gambling with their immediate financial security.
Imagine this. After months of stolen negotiation, the WNBA and team owners continued to ignore players' demand and jeopardize the future of women's professional basketball. The only people jeopardizing the future are the players. The owner's giving you over $1 million max salaries, raising revenue share from 9 to 15, $500,000 for the average player, $250 for the minimum. The only people ruining this deal are the players, because they believe that they're entitled.
By pursuing a maximalist strategy based on an unrealistic assessment of leverage and economics, the leadership risked a prolonged stalemate or even a work stoppage. The players who would be most crippled by missed paychecks are not the superstars. They are the rotation players, the rookies, the veterans clinging to the end of the bench. A strike is the ultimate weapon, but it is a weapon that wounds the army wielding it first and deepest when leverage is illusory. As the petition numbers suggested, calling for a strike is not a show of strength, it's a potential act of self-immolation. What was the alternative path? One built on strategic discipline and a clear-eyed assessment of strength. The union held real, tangible leverage from the 2024 season. The correct play was not to ignore Caitlin Clark's impact, but to weaponize it. The negotiation should have opened with a presentation of the data. Here are the attendance spikes. Here are the TV ratings. Here is the merchandise revenue. This player, and the collective excellence of the league that allows her to shine, has proven the product's potential value. Therefore, we demand a deal that does two things. First, it significantly improves player compensation and conditions today, as your offer does. And second, it creates an automatic, sliding scale mechanism that ties future player revenue sharing directly to league profitability metrics. This aligns incentives perfectly. It gives owners cost certainty now while guaranteeing players a rightful share of the growth they create. It turns the negotiation from a zero-sum fight over a static pie into a partnership agreement on how to grow the pie for everyone. Furthermore, the union could have focused intensely on quality of life provisions that cost owners less in direct cash but mean everything to players. Charter flight mandates to reduce the brutal travel grind, enhanced health care and mental health support, better maternity policies, and career transition programs. These are wins that unite the entire membership from superstar to rookie and build solidarity. They are also harder for ownership to oppose publicly. A campaign built on fair pay and dignity, anchored by real data, and focused on concrete, achievable gains would have been formidable. It would have presented the union as pragmatic, professional, and powerful. Instead, the chosen path has led to a stark predicament. The owners, having seen the union's public maneuvers fail to generate pressure, have little incentive to improve their already substantial offer. Why would they? The union has demonstrated no ability to meaningfully hurt them. The leverage has evaporated. The most likely outcome now is a deal that closely resembles the owner's initial proposal, which the union will then have to repackage and sell to its members as a historic victory after months of tumultuous negotiation. The real cost will be the lost time, the eroded credibility of the union leadership, and the lingering resentment among players who may rightly wonder what, if anything, was gained by the posturing. The 2025 WNBA CBA negotiations stand as a cautionary tale in modern sports labor relations. In an era where social media visibility is often conflated with real-world power, the Players Association confused the two. They mistook buzz for leverage, hashtags for resolve, and public sympathy for actionable support. They failed to understand that the owner's greatest fear is not bad press, but red ink. Not a petition, but an empty arena. By not grounding their strategy in the uncompromising realities of finance and fandom, they allowed a moment of historic strength to slip through their fingers. The lesson is universal. In negotiations, as in basketball, success belongs to those who execute a disciplined game plan based on their actual strengths, not to those who simply hope the crowd's cheers will be enough to sway the scoreboard. The final buzzer on these talks will sound, and a deal will be struck. But the film session for the WNBPA will be brutal, a masterclass in how not to play the game when the stakes are highest.